I will call the meeting to order. It's 2:04. Thank you, everybody, for coming and for going through all the efforts of the audio and video connection. But it's great to finally be in the same room together. It's been a long time since, well, it's been never since this board has actually been in a room together. So this is great. So I'd like to start with a moment of reflection, please. Thank you. Next, I'm going to read the Indigenous Acknowledgement Statement. We would like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18, region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wyandot peoples. So we have an agenda before us. I'd like to get a mover and seconder to put that on the table. So I see Joanne has moved, looking for a seconder. Dorothy, thank you. Any changes or suggestions for the agenda, Morris?
Laurie, taking into the minutes from the previous meeting, there was reference to a legacy document to be brought forward to this meeting. I don't see it on the agenda.
You're right. Yep. Joanne and I and Sabrina met at some point earlier this month, and we got a bunch of work done. And then we were waiting for the notes and our suggestions to come back. And then we will bring it to the September meeting. Any other questions or suggestions for changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the agenda as circulated? Great, all in favor? That's carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay, seeing none. We have 3 reports to be received. The action plan update, the CEO service update for July, and dissolving the Museum Advisory Council. I'm looking for a motion, mover and seconder for that, for the motion to receive those. Andrea? Seconder, Gary? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Minutes of the previous meeting. May I have a mover and seconder? Seconder. Morris. Thank you. Seconder, please. Joanne. Thank you. Any comments, changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Great, that's carried. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the minutes? I don't think I have any. We've already addressed the legacy question. Okay, seeing none, I don't think we need that motion about receiving discussions. Communications with the board. We have no deputations scheduled. We have nobody here to give us public input. And we have no correspondence.
I did have one correspondence, Madam Chair, but I have it embedded in the report that's coming later.
Okay, good. So again, we don't need a motion on those items. So then perhaps we can move to the strategic plan updates and action items. And the first one is the action plan update, and we have the July one in front of us. Does anyone have any questions or comments around this update? I just had one thing I wanted to ask. Sabrina, I see that you've got CH 2.5 marked as complete. It's develop homebound services for shut-ins and short, long-term disability community members. I'm wondering if you could just tell us about that.
Certainly. So we have created a method for people now to ask for a homebound service. It is a volunteer base, so part of what we're doing is working with them to identify people who are in their area that would then be able to just swing by, pick up the items, and bring it to them. So it's sort of a ask your friends and we'll work with them. Because of in FIPA and because of the various privacy concerns, we need permission to be able to give materials to somebody else. So although we're not physically delivering items, we are making ways for people to be able to expedite getting their materials without barriers.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions they want to ask about the action plan, any update? Is there anything, Sabrina, you want to comment on?
I do want to comment on an item that I just actually passed, and that is looking at the Blue Mountain Pottery. We have the expo this weekend that's happening, so if that's something that you are interested in pottery, we have collectors from across the globe that will be coming, and we'll be previewing our Blue Mountain Pottery film. So that was a film that was intended to be part of our Real History series, which are always short documentaries. So they range between 13 minutes to maybe 20 minutes on the long side. This is a feature-length film. It took on a life of its own, and our partner, Mountain Goat Film, said, we need to keep going with this one, and created a full-length film out of it. Because we want to launch this to be able to go to the film festivals like TIFF and other festivals, we're not showing the film in its entirety, and we're not showing the film necessarily in order. Plus, if there's anyone with stories who are attending the expo, we'll be prepared to actually do more recording at that time, so there may be more pieces coming in. So I just wanted to point that out because the 11th Real History film has taken a very different direction. And without our partner, there's no way we could afford to do this length of a film because we only paid for our 15 minutes of fame, so to speak. We really hope if you have stories that you'll be there and take a look at all of the things that'll be in, because it's going to be a great weekend.
Through Lori to Sabrina, do you have a time that these films will be shown?
They'll be shown throughout the day.
Oh.
So all day on Saturday, we'll be running the first portion, which is sort of the early days, and then the second portion, then on to the third portion, and then repeating. Okay. So it won't be done as much as a launch, which is what we originally thought it would be when it was going to be a short film. We'll just have it on a constant loop. Okay. So even if you miss one part and you go out and you do shopping and you want to come back and catch it later in the day, it'll be running.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to strategic plan pillar, the community hubs. There's no specific report, but is there any updates? I guess that would be directed to you, Sabrina.
I don't have any major updates. We're still moving forward with repairs and renovations at both of our facilities. Each of those are with the town's maintenance department. So we have a grant, as I've mentioned before, for Craigleith Heritage Depot, that our final numbers are coming in, and we're getting into the scheduling components of that. And then here at Ellie Shore, they're going to be doing window replacement. The cost of the windows are quite excessive. So this year we're replacing 4 of 7 windows. Next year we'll be coming back to council for the budget. The town maintenance department will be coming back to the town's budget for the remainder of those. And we're looking for this to be an annual piece that the maintenance department will be bringing each year as we go through all of the windows, which are 27 years, quite leaky, starting to get a lot of wood rot. So working that, you know, major piece that needs to be done on this building so that we keep it safe, sound, whole, and without any mold or mildews.
With the work being done, I guess particularly at the depot, will we be seeing any closures?
We shouldn't be having closures. I'm thinking that the depot may be taking place more in the spring. We have to have the funds spent by early 24, so the first quarter. So I think more of that's going to be next year, but there's pieces that may be happening this year. We may have some disruptions shortly when there's right in front of the entry that we can adjust people to a different entry, but we shouldn't have any closures. We may, if it gets too loud, I know on the roof, there was some sound issues in the building that the echo was quite loud when you were working there. So we did pull people out just for a day or two, but unless the windows and doors are difficult or it's just not working to replace windows and doors while we're open in areas, we may just have some service disruptions, but hoping not an actual closure. And we'll be making public announcements on all of those as they come.
Thank you. Any questions on this topic? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next pillar, empowering services, and the CEO service update for July.
I lost my window. There we go. All right, so the report is there. I won't go through all of it, but we have started counting some of our numbers here in the museum. That was one of the things that had been recommended to count since we were counting virtual, start looking at our gallery. You can see that from our virtual attendance, we are still having regular people viewing. But last month we had almost 2,500 people come through the gallery. So it is significant viewing that people are coming through, and this would actually be before our large July show, where we had quite a number of people attend for this. So this is June's numbers. At this point, we are looking at, large numbers in the gallery. Questions have been about how much activity and usage is it getting, and we're showing that just in 1 month. This is a main piece of the gallery. Whether you are coming directly for the gallery or whether when you're walking past to do some other function of library service here, you're entering in, we know that people are using it. Outside of that, you can see that we have high usage still from our virtual branch, which is fantastic. At this point, we are looking at the first half of the year with a little over 57,000 people who are actively using some aspect of our virtual materials on site. So when you're thinking of who our users are, and you can only access these pieces if you're using a library card, one of our patron cards, it's not just open to anybody outside. We have quite active patronage in this area. Our gallery this month, if you've not been in, I know you're all seeing it for the first time, July and August, we have our art show that is up that was a bit different than typical. This was a plan for 2020 as part of our 25th anniversary that was postponed, but it was the juried art show, which was a competition, and we had quite a number of people who applied. We have the shortlisted numbers. People who ranked it the highest that were shown in the gallery, and then you can see who won with the ribbons up, and this will be in the gallery through the end of August. Outside of that, we've had quite a number of successes through the month, but I will leave anything else for questions. And you can see that we still have access through Facebook and YouTube. They have dropped a bit. I think people are a little bit more active out in the world. And hopefully we'll see some of those users wanting to come in and see us face to face and be in the gallery. We do have chairs set up and agendas for the community to participate again on site.
Any questions for Sabrina on the service report? Okie dokie. Thanks, Sabrina. The next one is organizational excellence. And the first one is mine, which is also a brief report. So Morris and I have those dates. So I met with Joanne and Sabrina on June 30th on the legacy report. We have another meeting scheduled for July 29th. So that draft document will come to the board for review and approval in the fall, either September or October, depending on how far we get into the actual finishing the draft report. And we are scheduled for a deputation to the committee of the whole on September 26th regarding board recruitment. So we have that date set up. And that's it. It's a quiet month for me. Anyone have any questions? No? Okay, then the next item is the dissolving of the Museum Advisory Council. And I just asked Sabrina to comment. I think this is the one where you referenced correspondence.
Yes. So I will share my screen here. So we had, oh, wrong one. Sorry about that. We have not had involvement with MAC since the pandemic. In early 2020, the board and ACC opted to go right into Teams, followed by Zoom. MAC opted at that point not to do meetings virtually and to wait for the pandemic to subside. We haven't had a MAC meeting since January of 2020. We've had quite a number of people who have left MAC at that point and actually don't have a quorum with the 1 or 2 members that actually didn't resign. Also, the board, along the way of the pandemic, sunset all the committees, and MAC is a committee of the board. It's not a board of its own. It's not appointed by council. It is something that is appointed here at this table. And when the board opted to sunset the committees and handle all materials on site, all of the MAC items that would otherwise have been going to MAC have been coming here. So you've been approving the policies, you've been getting the reports on the depot. And it was brought to our attention that by one of the members who had resigned at some point a few years back, that it's still read as if MAC should be running based on what we have in our bylaws and what we have on our policies. So I had some housekeeping items that really did sort of clean that up. And one point I just wanted to make is as we are changing bylaws and policies without notice, we would need to have the resolution by the board to actually agree to do that. It was on the agenda. It was given notice in that way. So we're not out of step. We can still make that happen. But to sunset the MAC, Museum Advisory Council's terms of reference, we don't need a special resolution for that, just a resolution to do that. And then policy bylaw 2018.91, which is the museum general, to be amended to meet the new reality of where we are with our funding. So it doesn't say that we must have a MAC, a Museum Advisory Council. It says that we'll have a body that can meet the qualifications for the CMOG, which is the Community Museum Operating Grant. And a background on that piece, we were working very hard towards getting back into the CMOG. The CMOG was lost in 2015. So when this board, when the library board took on the museum, we were long out of the CMOG, and there was no opportunity to return in. When the Liberal government was in power of the day, there were rumors that they were going to be reopening the CMOG because in 2015, quite a number of community museums all lost their granting because we didn't meet qualifications anymore. And that is what happened with CHD. So we worked to make sure that we hit all of the standards with the hope that that would happen. It didn't happen. Since then, there have been government changes, and it's very clear that CMOG is not going to be opening up to old members who didn't qualify or failed to qualify along the way. And the way the CMOG is listed is you qualify for the next year's funding if you receive funding in the previous year. So we'll never qualify based on that standard. So what we've done is we have stopped using the CMOG, the Ontario Museum qualifications, and instead we use the Ministry of Heritage because that's the funding that we qualify for. And they do not require a museum advisory council or a museum board. There just has to be a governing body, which the museum has been for quite some time under the library, and ultimately is the library board's purview to do that. You had just delegated some pieces to the MAC. So these two pieces would clean it up so that we are actually working within our bylaws and our policies appropriately. There would be nothing out of step for us as an organization, for us as staff, or for the museum specific. In recent years, the MAC had taken on a lot of fundraising initiatives. Much of that fell apart, as we know, in 2020. We had a lot of things planned that didn't happen. But since that point, we've done a very comprehensive strategic plan, and our community has, without question, told us, please do not come and ask us for money. We pay in taxes. We're not looking for major fundraising events. And that really was part of the plan, was to try to raise $1 million or $2 million towards an expansion of the Craigleith Heritage Depot. Since that point, we know that things have changed with our current municipal council and certainly with the will of our community. Our current council has opted not to expand library services at Craigleith Heritage Depot and instead entertain having a new facility that would be in Craigleith that would have other government services, other government needs, and the addition of a library there, which would bring the Craigleith Heritage Depot back into a museum proper, so that would be their main function, and would be a third site of the Blue Mountains Public Library. So on that, there would certainly be some renovation needs and some tidying of lots and things that we've all identified, aspects that are in the municipal condition reports of the building, but not necessarily a $2 million fundraising campaign to expand that site to be able to bring on a fuller library service. So many of the things that we had planned, many of the things that MAC was involved with that we saw a really key function in those early days of the museum being under the board really have changed in recent years, whether it be because of the pandemic or because of our strategic plan feedback by the community. So I don't feel that it would be a lack to our organization by sunsetting MAC. I feel that the people who want to volunteer their services can certainly be involved in other ways that still support the museum, just like we have gallery volunteers and we have program volunteers and literacy volunteers. We still have museum volunteers, so we would be able to do work with them on areas of museum specific pieces without it being a governance style body. So unless there are questions, I think that brings us to why we've gotten to where we are, why we should clean it up, and certainly I will entertain any questions. Our museum curator would be here, Andrea Wilson, but as I said, in less than 24 hours, we'll be knee-deep in the Blue Mountain Pottery Expo, an international event that has been 5 years in the making. So I will answer on her behalf. Might I say they're a little busy right now?
Does anyone have any questions before we get into the mechanics of motions? I see none. Okay, so I think you said earlier in that we need a motion to waive notice of a policy change.
Correct. It was provided in the report that this is what was the recommendation, and the package goes out a week before, and so that is to the public. So we've done the public aspect of that. And the notice is that we had given notice to board members, not the public, 1 month prior, so that nobody feels that because they missed a meeting, we slid something under the table for a board member. We have 100% of our complement present. So if the board is comfortable with that, you can waive that notice because you're all present, and then we can continue forward.
So I'd like to ask for a mover and seconder to waive notice of policy change. So I see Gary is moving it and Dorothy is seconding it. Any questions or discussion on that? Okay, go ahead, Andrea.
Just a quick question through you, the chair, to Sabrina. You mentioned, and I did look up the advisory council, museum advisory council, current members until 2022. Was there a conversation about shifting a role into being a volunteer in another aspect, the ones that remain?
We will reach out to the ones who are remaining and see if there's pieces that they would like to do. I know that there is at least one of the members that is still an active volunteer,
Right.
doing other aspects. Other members also have taken on the writing circle, things that we do out of the depot itself. They're still actively involved. It's just the governance component is what we're looking at dissolving and making that clearly part of this board. Something to consider on the recruitment aspect next year. We've always had people who are interested in the library board. Certainly we want to be able to promote again that the library board is a GLAM. So not that we have a seat for gallery and a seat for museum, but really trying to recruit and push people who maybe have a focus would be a good addition to the board. Since most of the discussions deal with the bigger organization, but it's always nice to have that focus. Deputy Mayor Rob Potter really filled that role for us with museum. He was actually a rep on MAC and had been involved with the museum for decades. So as we were discussing things here at this table, he always made sure to keep that museum focus in mind and not let anything slip. So I think that would be a good thing to keep in mind as we're doing our promotion in the fall for new members. That, you know, as a GLAM, we would love people who are focused on the bigger pieces of the organization.
Morris?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Sabrina. In your opinion, Sabrina, if this board passes both of those motions that you sort of indicated up on the screen, will that satisfy the MAC, the fire MAC person?
I don't know that it's going to satisfy what a former MAC member is asking for, but it certainly meets what we have been doing for the past 2 years, just doing the housekeeping of the paperwork that I neglected to bring forward. So in the fact of the points that she made, yes, we were working out of step according to what our policies were. So this cleans that up so that what we have been doing for the past 2 years, keeping the organizational governance piece with the board, is properly documented in our materials.
Thank you.
Jesse?
Madam Chair, through you, I'm wondering if I could ask Andrea, what changed in terms of the approach of council vis-a-vis Craig Leith's growth prospects? I seem to recall that there were studies carried out some time ago, within the last 2 or 3 years, suggesting that Craig Leith was likely to grow very significantly in terms of population, housing, etc., and that this created a basis for expanding the library at Craigleith. And now that seems to have totally reversed itself. I wonder what's happened.
Andre, care to answer that?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. No, I think that that is a good, it's a good pause to what Sabrina had said about how instead of the focus of directly on the Craigleith depot itself and an expansion within that, we actually do need to take a bigger look at the demographic change and the strategic services, not just the library, but other services that we need to balance out in that particular larger portion of our population. So the idea that the Craigleith Depot could retain its presence as a museum proper, with the idea that maybe this is the idea where we have a branch library positioned with the other services that we might need to see over there. I mean, there is an open discussion about where the next recreation center should be in the town of Blue Mountains. You know, and so this is good timing to be poised as a library to say, here's the data that we have that says we need to service this end of our town of Blue Mountains for all of our land services. And we have our gem of our museum here, but we could be doing more over there if we had the kind of facilities. And certainly what I've seen, what I've been learning along the way from other communities is these combination facilities is really the way to go, you know, rather than building a separate recreation center and a separate library and a separate, you know, saying, well, listen, what are all the things we need to fill in and how could we share in that space?
Thank you.
If I may add on to that, Madam Chair, the town departments and Blue Mountains Public Library, myself as the rep, have also been meeting with the municipality's consultant on the development charge study. This will be a large document and very large consultation process that goes through the community, I believe in the next council. But a year out is when the consultants begin speaking with departments and the library to make sure that we begin to update and know what the plans are. And the information that we have provided, working with the CAO and working with the consultant, is based on the municipality's current direction of a campus happening in the Craigleith area that would include the library and other pieces. So the numbers that we're looking at are based on our 2018 needs assessment, based on the price point that we knew was going to be there, the actual price point that was presented, not other discussions happened along the way, and really focusing on what that means as being part of a campus. So that is something that as we move forward over the next year, I think more information will come out on that and it will begin to become embedded into this larger sort of strategic plan that the municipality has for how to collect development charge money and where to put it. There's a long process ahead of us with both this municipal government and I'm sure the next council before we get there. So there may be some changes in how it looks over the years, but it is sort of the moving direction at this point of council, of Town of Blue Mountains Council. So I don't want to say that we've totally reversed having a library because we haven't. We've just moved where the library would live in the community to look at it as a holistic, larger campus that provides many other municipal services in the same place.
Morris?
Madam Chair, I believe we're discussing the dissolution of the Museum Advisory Council. We seem to somehow drifted off into discussing the future of Craigleith. Could we come back to the subject?
Yes, so I can call the question now on motion to waive notice of the policy change, if you're ready for that. All in favor? Hang on a second. This has to be unanimous, right? And Joanne has just left the room, or just coming back.
Joanne's just coming back.
Yes, okay.
We'll wait for her to be in front of her camera so that we have it on record.
Yes, we were just, we have Gary as a mover and Dorothy as a seconder to waive the notice of policy change because it's a motion to waive we need unanimous consent. So all in favor? Great, that's carried. Thank you very much.
I think you mean carried unanimously.
What did I say?
Carried unanimously?
Yeah. Yes, what did I say?
Well, that word is required, I think, for the purpose.
Okay, carried unanimously. So we have this museum general policy before us, so that needs to be approved as well, Sabrina. And I just want to mention, I think there might be an error under authority, because under the new number 1, we got it. The new number 1 under authority still refers to the Museum Advisory Council. And I believe that is meant to be board. You see where I'm at?
Number,
Under authority,
yes,
number 1, the new number 1, it says Museum Advisory Council for approval. I think that needs to change to
Yes.
board.
thank you.
Okay.
So I will change that to board.
Okay. Are there any questions about this policy? In which case, I'd like to get a motion on the floor to approve the policy as amended.
So moved.
Morris, thank you. And Andrea, thank you. Seconder. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much. I know we're, this is sort of cleaning up some stuff that we missed, particularly at the last meeting when we actually dealt formally with the committees. But do we need a motion to formally sunset MAC? And that's sort of in view of it's no longer required in the absence of any CMOG community museum operating grant.
Yes.
Okay. So can I have a motion to sunset MAC? Andrea? Thank you. Seconder, Joanne? Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you. Did I get all the motions required?
I did, yes.
And did I? That's actually the question. Okay. Then I think that topic is done. Great. So I guess I need a motion that the board receive the strategic plan discussions as information.
Fourth one?
It's always here. I'm not sure why, but yes, it's always here. Someone care to move it? Nobody wants to move that motion? Seconder, please, Gary. Jesse, thank you. All in favor? Against? No, okay, that carried. Other business. We have the Q2 variance report. So I'll pass it over to Sabrina for comment.
All right. So our second quarter is here. I did make some changes based on the comments from the Q1 report. And then I also had some questions from our chair after I provided the report, so I will address some of those as well as I'm moving forward. I apologize, the reserve fund for $17,000 did mature on May 2nd. I did not update that. It is an 18-month, so that will be available again October 29th of 2023. I didn't worry about closing that one out or bringing it to the board's attention because if we needed money, it would only be during the fiscal. We'll know that by the end of the year. And we do have the 109,000 that matures as of September 28th. I don't see any point in closing it unless you simply wanted to move out of the GIC. If that's something that the board is interested in doing, we certainly can move for that. It would just be going into a savings. Frankly, it's the same amount of interest either way. That is an annual, so that would be available to us again, September of 23. So both would be very close, available next fiscal. Outside of that, the actual figures I have here for you as well. This was based on some of the comments that you brought in before. I have combined all of the expenses and all of the revenue and not broken them into the various lines. That was a bit confusing last time, so hopefully this is a bit easier to look at. There is a negative expense in the furniture, and that had to do with a purchase that was made that was refunded over a fiscal, so we end up with a bit of a credit there. That's all that is. Additionally, there is a special line of capital that is not in here, which is 26,000. That is our website that is in progress. But you can see that we're well on target. At this point, when we look at our revenues, we do show that we would be just at a slight negative of under $500 of an over expense. But you also can see that when we look at our own source revenues and our commissions, I never include that in the budget because I don't want to count on it. We found out in 2020, if you count on those things, many libraries had significant issues because they counted on money that then didn't materialize. So I always look at that as extra money that would come in. You can see in our first year, we're a little over $5,000. So that will most definitely cover our $500 shortfall. So we have no issues at this point that we are assuming to. The capital funds, I listed those which are rollover by council as technically received, even though it's not really a received, it's just everyone has agreed to those. The 60,000 is for the furniture that originally was put forward to happen in 2020 that was all clawed back because of the pandemic. In 21, we didn't want to move forward with purchasing the service desk because we didn't know what libraries would look like and if we should be making decisions based on 2 meters or more. So we held off until 2022, and we're now in the process of making those purchases. And strat plan rollover is a very small amount, and then the reserves rollover are commission monies that were available from ACC and other things that are tethered to that group. So it may not be reserves in the legal bylaw reserve, but we look at it as a reserve because it's tethered, and that's something that keeps rolling with us. So outside of any other questions, that's all I have for this report.
Of course.
So Brenda, could you talk to the very first item you showed us? On the expenses, sorry. I'm sorry, keep going up. Way up.
Under the land
The
reserve.
land reserve?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I've got a good memory, but it's kind of short. Could you just refresh my memory? $109,000 and change. Is that the matured value or is that the original investment?
That is the original investment as it stands that is the investment as it stands today.
And as of, and this report was as of June 30th?
On June 28th, we will then have additional interest that gets rolled into that.
On June 28th.
I'm sorry, September 28th. There will be additional interest rolled in.
That's what I had in mind, that's right. So in September 28th, there'll be another $17,000 of interest to add to that?
No, there'll be maybe 1,300. We have 2 separate GICs. So the 109 is one GIC. If we were to cash it today, that's what we would get. If we wait until September 29th or 28th, there would be an extra interest portion on that of about $1,300 or $1,400.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, I understand. That's
And then the 17,000 is a separate fund that we had. We opted not to roll them together, but to do them as sort of a staggering, where one is a 12-month and one was an 18-month.
I would have thought
it's only an opinion, but I would have thought that, well, I've said this before, that when you're reporting to us, that you would report that, say, March 31st, June 30th, September 30th through the year, you would report the mature value as opposed to the original amount.
I know we've had this conversation. The amount that is there is if we cash it any day before September 27th, that is what we'll get. Because it doesn't mature daily, it matures on the annual maturity date. So in that case, if I went tomorrow to cash it out for the board, I'll get $109,909.57. If I go on September 25th, that's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get the same amount. It is a one-day opportunity of cashing it out without penalty or cashing it out with the interest. So the only day that we can cash it is on the 28th, and we have to give them 30 days notice to be able to do that on the appropriate day. So in this case, we only would receive this amount because all interest would be lost if we cash it out outside of the period.
Okay, we've had this discussion a few times, yes.
So it doesn't mature. You're correct if it was a typical account that we could pull it out and know what would be, you know, weekly, monthly, but it's not the way this GIC is. If you pull it out outside of that one day a year, or in the 17,000 case, that one day every 18 months, you get no more money. They claw back the interest and penalty.
Remind me never to invest in that type of investment.
Jesse,
Well, Sabrina, if I understand what you're saying, the investment is locked in
Yes,
and not cashable with the interest unless it matures at the maturity date.
correct.
And are there other options? I'm keeping in mind the presumed increase in interest rates over the past few months. Are there other options as of the maturity date, September 28, which might enhance our ability to cash at an earlier date, depending on how the interest rates are rising or not rising, as the case may be?
Most definitely. Through you, Madam Chair, the board can decide to cash out the 109,000 and put it into a general account at this point, a separate general account, while you make decisions on where you would like to invest it. It is a GIC that is a very low interest rate. So it's not the best opportunity. It's a safe opportunity. It's locked away, but there are other opportunities that maybe have a better interest option. We would just want to make sure that we're prepared to pull the money out so we don't have to wait another year to make the decision.
Don't the financial institutions offer 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 12 month
Yes.
investment opportunities?
They do, but the interest rate is even lower than what we're getting at the 12-month.
Well, that's a trade-off for having the flexibility of getting
Certainly.
the cash.
Yes.
just a question of my own. Do we have any need for this cash in the next year?
It is not budgeted in our budget.
And this is actually for expansion, right?
It is.
This number, okay. And Morris?
I would like to make a suggestion, Madam Chair, that perhaps between now and, well, September 28th, that an in-depth discussion or investigation of other opportunities we undertaken, because I tend to think that with rising interest rates, people are, you can't get a cashable GIC. The interest rate doesn't change a heck of a lot from a non-cashable one. It's less. But should we not look at those opportunities? We have time now between now and the end of September. I know it's extra work, but it would be fiscally prudent to do
Jesse?
Just adding to what Morris has just said, Madam Chair, through you. We're dealing here with public money. And I think we must not only do what we can to maximize the return, but to be seen as doing so. And that being said, I endorse the idea that we should get some professional investment advice as to how we can maximize that return. $109,000 is a lot of money.
Just want to comment that our policies do provide some limitations on where we can invest, and I forget what they actually say, but it's maybe AA quality type
Right,
of.
rating is really all that we're looking at. If this is the case, and I agree, it's extremely restrictive and the interest rate is extremely low. So it's, you know, a glorified savings account is the way this GIC is set up. If this is the case, my recommendation would be that the board pass a resolution that the 109, this current GIC on the date of maturity will collect the interest, and that we close the GIC and put it into our savings account, which is a separate account, while we're making decisions on how to properly and safely invest it. That way, we have a little bit of time to make decisions without worrying about paying penalties by missing the date, and we bring back some discussion opportunities for what we want to do at the September board meeting, even the October board meeting, and not be worrying about missing the date.
Jesse.
Respectfully, we have 60 days between now and the maturity date. Can we not get some professional advice in that time frame?
We can, we would just have to call a board meeting to pass the resolution to do it.
Why can't we have a resolution right now?
That's what I'm suggesting.
I'm so moving.
Can we get a wording of that motion then,
I
please?
move that the CEO be charged with the obligation of conferring together with the chairperson with our professional investment advisor to explore the investment opportunities which may be available for the $109,909.57 plus accrued interest between now and September 28th.
I guess it's a bit late to ask you to speak more slowly, isn't it?
Sorry about that.
The gist of that is a motion to seek professional investment advice with the goal to maximize our interest.
To explore what the CEO together with the chair meet with our professional investment advisor in order to explore whether there are more advantageous avenues of investment within the legal requirements under the Public Libraries Act and its regulations between now and the 28th and the next board meeting.
I loosely have, and I can clean up the wording a bit if everyone is comfortable with this, that the CEO with the chair will confer with a professional investment officer to explore the investment opportunities for the 109,000 and change GIC plus interest prior to the close of the September 28th rollover.
Good.
And you had something about within, so the PLA, Public Libraries Act, but I think it probably is within our own policies.
It seems to me that's implicit.
Yes, okay. You added a date, which I think I heard something, two things that may be a bit different. One is that we can simply give notice that this can roll into our regular savings account, because right now the interest is the same anyway. And that gives us time to decide and maybe meet in September to receive the recommendation. And I see Morris shaking his head. I'm trying to avoid an August meeting. That's all.
We have to give notice that we're going to cash out. We wouldn't cash out until September 28th. That way we gain the interest of the year.
Correct.
And at that point, we will either know where it's going, or if we want to bring back where it's going, which would be my personal preference. If there's a gap, it's just going to drop with the interest and everything into our savings account for however many days it takes to make the investment appropriately.
Because we're actually meeting in September prior to September 28th, so we
Exactly.
don't have to worry about that timing. Okay,
I just have to give notice to the bank 30 days prior because it takes them time to do their paperwork.
Right, so you do have to give them notice by August 28th. And then
Prior to the next board meeting, but we don't have to have a final plan of where it's going for
Right.
the investment. That can be brought back here.
Okay. Great. Morris, still see a look on your face?
Yes, I'm really not disturbed, but I'm speaking from experience because I've just gone through the same thing on a personal basis, not quite to that level. If I may speak through whatever to Jesse, professional financial people are a dime a dozen. Pick up the phone and talk to a bank. Talk to an investment company. They'll jump at $100,000. For if they get to handle it, you don't have to pay them. You can get advice of not anyone, but there are certain good ones around. Number two, we cast the thing out on September 28th. The money goes into our account. We can then decide then, or a week from then, or a month from there, where we put it. We don't have to make a decision right away. We can stay whatever time we need. We're not pressed for time for this. All I was suggesting was that we at least look at other opportunities. For instance, I'll throw one out. And don't take this, but if we invest in certain stocks with the proper investigation, that thing up there, that $109,000 is returning 1%. The interest rate is whatever it is, one point something, I don't care. There are bank stocks that will yield between 5 and 7% on forward yielding. And they're available. And they're dividend paying stocks. They're far better than the GIC you buy today. I am speaking from experience and some knowledge in this thing. Let's simplify it. I'm suggesting, I can second the motion, but you can simplify it and say this board instructs the CEO advisor, or ask the CEO to look at other investment opportunities and come back to the board with her suggestions. Jesse, you've made it a long thing. It's not necessary. I'll second it if you want to word it that way.
I'm just going to add a comment. I'm not going to take sides. And I agree with you, Morris, that investment advisors are a dime a dozen. You get what you pay for.
Of course you do.
So I'm thinking in the context of a professional advisor who's going to maybe charge a fee. The second thing I want to say is we are not in a position to predict what's going to happen with interest rates. And as much as they may have gone up by 1 or 2 points over the past month or two, they may go down. And I therefore, with you, that you strike while the iron is hot. Finally, I want to say that you made reference to stocks. I don't, subject to what Sabrina may tell me, I don't think that we're permitted to get into anything which has that kind of risk. I mean, stocks are very volatile, can be very volatile.
So if I may, going back to the original motion that I proposed, which is that the board instruct me to cash out the GIC upon maturity for September 28th, to move that into our savings account and to bring back recommendations to the September meeting. We can then further discuss where we would like to be. If you want to have more legal advice, if we want to work with our municipal finance department to see where their recommendations are. We have a lot of opportunities for people that are free services at this point to give us advice before we move into others, and we may choose to move into more professional advice. But at this point, just to know that we're going to cash out at maturity is the first step.
Yes.
Okay.
That one I will second.
Okay, so Jesse, you okay with that
Yes.
motion? And Morris as a seconder? Discussion on it, please. Gary.
I like Sabrina's idea of talking to the municipal finance people. They would know as well as anybody what some options would be for us. GIC rates are going up right now, for sure. And that might be the safest. I don't think we can do bank stocks. I knew certainly condominium corporations cannot. It has to be basically GIC. So we might want to look at those options, but I think we can do better than we have done.
Other questions or comments?
Just a comment, anything, I want to reiterate that it's not just doing the best we can, it's being seen to be doing the best we can. Number two, I'm sure that there must be information readily available as to what we may or may not invest our surplus funds in. And Gary is quite right, it's going to be relatively risk-free. This is public money.
Yeah, there are limitations, I think, because we are public money, and also within our own policies, we put limitations in place. So we'd be looking within that context, and I do think probably, I know stocks are not a possibility.
And the new Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, I will say I did not look to see where their investment limitations are, but I will look at that as well to see if there's any other aspects in there as well that may have rolled into the 2010 version that actually just was approved this year.
2010.
But this means we can't look at second mortgages.
Correct. But I think moving forward with letting it roll to its end, collecting the interest out of it, closing it out, that is the part that's time sensitive. At that point, then we have all the time in the world to make decisions on where is the best place to do this, where to let our public trust know that we are doing our due diligence, both in, as Jesse said, making the best that we can, but also that they see through transparency the types of decisions we're making. We have a lot of opportunities and we have a lot of resources at our disposal. So cashing out is the only part that's time sensitive at this point.
Thank you. Gary, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I'm away, excuse me, a little bit in August, but I would be pleased to join yourself and Sabrina to look at the rates and all of that. If you want another person to look at it with you, I'd be pleased to join your group.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before I call the question? Do we need to hear the motion?
Could you, excuse me, could you reread the motion?
Sabrina? Take a minute to actually put it together if you want.
Four motions, just one.
Or even just the
So I
key.
have that the board instructs the CEO to cash out the GIC upon maturity on September 28th and to return with recommendations to the board.
In conference with the chair.
Yes, yes.
Are we okay with that motion? Horace? You okay? It just,
I'm just reading something, it's okay.
oh, okay. Your body language is a little bit, okay. I'm gonna call the question, all in favor? Opposed? I guess that was everybody. Okay, that was carried, thank you. Okie dokie. That was that item. So the next item on the agenda is the round table. And I'm interested, actually, Sabrina, I see you're doing another mailbox party. I know we used that during part of the strategic planning exercise, but tell me what that one's about.
So we have a few mailbox parties in July and August that we're doing, and the intention for that is to check back in with our community. It's nice weather, it's a beautiful time to be out for a few hours. We know people are still stopping by in our rural communities at their mailboxes. So it is an opportunity to say, we heard you last year. This is what we did. Do you have questions? We were told you wanted us in rural communities. Did you know that we're at Ravenna Hall? Did you know that we're at the Craig Lee Schoolhouse? Did you know we're doing these things? Is it what you expected? Is there anything more you would like us to do? And really just have that touch base. So it worked very well to get our feedback in the first place. So we thought it was an excellent way to just touch base and make sure that people know that we heard, we reacted, make sure it's what they thought we were going to react with.
I think that's a great idea. Can we make sure that shows up in the key messages and the context you gave as well? That this is a sort of touching back after we heard advice from you. Is there any other items for roundtable someone wants to bring up?
Just one more push again to go to the expo this weekend. There is a driving tour. There are locations that you can see where the pottery was sold, manufactured, things like that, that you can do on the driving tour. We have some great sponsors who have been of assistance to us. There's barbecues, there's the day-long event. The members are going to be meeting for a meeting. If you're not a member, but you are a collector, you may want to join their organization. We are going to be pre-selling a book that we are actually writing, a history book on Blue Mountain pottery that has many of the images, and we have published a Blue Mountain calendar, Blue Mountain pottery calendar, that is an 18-month calendar with fabulous photos, professionally published, so that you can see a beautiful photo at the top, and then the calendar of that month for the next 18 months. Those will all be available for sale there. The calendar will be available at both Valley Shore and Depot after that, and that is going to be part of how we make the money to finish the publication of this book.
May I have a mover and seconder to receive information from the roundtable discussions? Dorothy, moving. Seconder, please. Joanne. Thank you. Any questions? Other discussion? All in favor? It's carried. The next item is the key messages update. We got a draft of that. You know what? I noticed a number of really interesting stats in your service report. And I see you picked up the gallery one as a big one. There was a couple of others that I thought were pretty interesting. I put one down. I think I wrote down that CIRC had an 84% increase this year over last year, which basically shows that people are starting to come back in the year and actually borrow books now that we're open again. And there's active users increased quite a bit, I think. There may be others, I didn't write them all down. Digital circulation, I think you commented on, at 13% increase. Anyway, I just thought that maybe some of the ones that sort of stand out as being significant, we might toss in here as well.
Certainly.
Does anyone else have any suggestions about the key messages? I think you pretty much captured stuff.
And this one will be going out tonight or tomorrow. Usually wait a bit longer towards the end of the month to capture anything that comes in, but given that we're also making information about the expo, we'd like that to go out right away. So it should be released either tonight or first thing tomorrow, so that there's one more push and reminder for the expo, which is a major event in our strategic plan, in our action plan this year, but also a major event of the depot, supported by the entire team of Blue Mountains Public Libraries organization.
Just ask
Yes.
question, Lori, about the pop-up at Rebecca Sabrina. Is that well attended?
We have a few families that are coming for story time. It's not highly attended. I would say, 3 to 5 people show up for the few hours that we're there. But it's not always the same, which is good. We're trying to promote the fact that not only can you come for services, but if you have a holds pickup and you call us and you know we're coming, we'll bring them there. It's difficult to kind of hit the time that everybody wants. We were doing the full day on Friday just to test the waters. We didn't intend for it to remain as an 8-hour day. So now we're doing in the afternoons, which give people who are wanting to come in the early afternoon, but then also the after school crowd can come. So we're hoping to keep growing and building. We'll see how it goes in the winter, if that falls off, and then maybe we'll sort of let that rest for the winter if that's the case. We're also doing our children's program, which all of our programs really used to be here at Ellie Shore just because of the space that we have. We've started moving around with Ravenna Hall and in Craigleith to do some of those pieces. So we have new families that are finding out who we are. And in many cases, we're having new families in Craigleith who didn't realize that Ellie Shore was here. So we always hear from people that maybe they didn't know that the Craigleith Heritage Depot was part of the organization. But with Craigleith, they're seeing the Craigleith Heritage Depot as the museum and the library, but they thought that was it. So they haven't even ventured towards Thornbury because they always keep venturing in the other direction. So we're gaining new families that maybe came once or twice, found out about other things that we do, and now we're going to the Depot for things, or now we're going to Ellie Shore. So it's also a good marketing as well.
Joanne?
Through Lori to Sabrina, do you recall when the mayor suggested that we have signage to direct people to the library? Has anything happened on that?
We have the main signs that have library this way or museum that way. One of the pieces we really need to look at is the sign at the depot, because the depot, it's the old signage from when it was the municipal museum. So it's a little confusing because people see Town of Blue Mountains and not, library or anything on it, so that gets confusing. The museum sign also is quite obstructed by shrubbery, so it needs to have some trimming done. I think one of the things to look at is we've heard from many people of the library that they turn off of 26.
And expect it right there.
And they expect it much closer, and they turn around once they're sometimes even before the arena, even before, Arthur. And they've gone back, so they don't go far enough. So I think having some keep going signs. Somewhere along Bruce Street South, there's also the library with the arrow saying keep going.
Yeah. Or from the other direction.
From the other direction for, Clarksburg to know, come on this way. And I think we have people who are lost coming off the main road coming up.
Are there
coming down 13?
Are there town regulations?
Yep.
What kind of signs you can put up, or?
There are, and we also have to work with whoever's road it is, whether it is a county road, Gray County, whether it is a MTO road.
That's the big hoop to jump.
We certainly meet all of the qualifications. We already have them on.
Can we move that we go forward with this?
I don't think we need a motion, but I can certainly add that into the minutes that there was some direction, and I will get where we are and what needs to be done. We don't have anything currently on county roads, so that would be a new addition here specifically, and on 19. 26 is all with MTO, and there's very specific legislation on what we can do, but we already have the signs. It might just be about better placement of them.
I guess you'd need directions coming from where you are.
I absolutely do. I have to be told what day it is, my full name, my phone number, and where my keys are.
Yes, I understand.
Gary?
Just thinking about
the need to let people know from Craig Leith, where we are up here. I know there was a mailbox party at Windfall, I think was canceled.
Yes.
Living in that area, I wonder how many people appreciate the library here. And I think you're doing some work with the town on a newcomers information
Yes, so
package.
there is a welcome package that's now being distributed by the town
That would
to
be a-
every new facility. We also have sent off to the various developers, because when they're selling them, they usually have a guide on what amenities are in the community. So we're starting to work with the developers to include both CHD and LA Shore as the Blue Mountain Public Library facilities, so those make it in. And we're hoping that even before somebody purchases, they'll know where we are. And then the welcome package will help to remind them when they get there what we offer to them.
Okay, that's helpful. On Crosswinds Boulevard coming into Windfall, there are a lot of municipal signs now coming up talking about the transportation plan, this plan, feedback on this, and community feedback. So I don't know if they're generic signs, billboards they put out for a few days. They might want to just put something out about the library in Thornbury, just to get people, because we're right on the border of Collingwood. And people sort of go that way, but your library card's $100 and some odd because you're out of town resident. Whereas if they knew they had access at the depot, which they don't often know as a library, and up here, I think that'd be really helpful. And again, when people are moving in, they're just so busy, they're not thinking about the library initially, but now people are settling in. I think there might be a way to maybe even market a postcard to them or something, just because there are a lot of communities along there with new residents, and it would be a good time to let them know about it.
And many of our Craig Leith users are browsing here at LA Shore, but they're doing most of their shopping online and then having it picked up at Craig Leith Heritage Depot, so that they kind of get the best of both worlds. There's Wednesday evening hours there, and then there's Saturday and Sunday hours, so it makes it very convenient to be able to place your hold, have it shipped to the depot, and then pick up and drop off there, especially the drop off. You don't have to drive all the way back to drop off the book as you're heading in either direction. Right there at the corner of 19 and 26 is a book drop.
I've actually had friends go into the depot and it's part of the Blue Mountains, but think of it exclusively as a museum, because the library portion is quite small. And I'm wondering, is it possible to have some signage that refers something, and probably these are the wrong words, but maybe Branchian, Thornbury, or something that basically says this is not the only library service available to you. Gary?
I would just add to that, even on any signage there where it's say depot, whatever you want to say, museum, I guess it's archives too, right? So museum, archives, and library, just because I don't think people appreciate what's there. They understand maybe more the museum part.
Any other comments or questions? This is still on the key messages update, I guess. Okay, I'm looking for a mover and seconder to approve the release of the key messages update for July 2022. Jesse, moving, thank you. Dorothy, seconding. Any other discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. So the next meeting is scheduled for September 15 at 2 p.m. I have a question. This is the first time we've met in person, which is we found a way of actually then also recording it for people to see. So I think this is really a nice opportunity. Are people comfortable continuing to do that unless we have some major COVID upset and then we switch back to Zoom? But go on the assumption that we can do it in person as we've done today. And let me double check that that's actually possible, so we have to reserve this space.
Yes, I have for the rest of the year reserved in here and in the boardroom. I know the boardroom is a bit tight for people to feel comfortable. We do have the hermetic system running in there as well, which is helping in the boardroom, but we have both spaces reserved so that we can just make decisions as we go.
Will it be outlined suggest we move the tables this way and this way. Bring them a little closer.
Certainly.
I mean, it's only a suggestion or a thought. Are we far enough apart then? and so forth?
We did the 2 meters since we're masks off for the purpose of the recording. So that's why it's more than 2 meters here, but it's the 6 feet between seats and then just being an odd number. But we can reconfigure and try to get a little closer and still keep a safe distance.
Yeah, good.
Jesse?
With respect to the September 15th meeting, if I was not available physically, can I participate remotely?
We can try hybrid. We can see how it works. We've had problems with the echo when we have to turn the sound on, which is why it's fantastic to do this when we're all in the same room. If we're not in the same room, it gets a little bit difficult that there's a bit of an echo, but we'll work with it and see how we need to do it.
It's done via Zoom in any event.
Yes. We'll still be doing Zoom so that we can broadcast to the community.
Thank you.
I think meetings like this far outweigh Zoom meetings. And I'll tell you why, because even though we don't record them, we do get discussions on some subjects. And it's important that people hear the discussions. Wouldn't you agree, Jesse?
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So the intent is in-person meetings in this kind of setup, unless we're forced to back off from that because of COVID. Fair enough? Great. Good.
Madam Chair,
Oh, sorry, Gary.
just given the municipal elections, how many more board meetings do we have?
The board actually stays in place until the next board is in place. So typically with our schedule, November is the last meeting, just because we don't usually meet in December. And depending on how quick the council gets moving, they usually have a group in place for January. But legally, according to the Public Library Act, until they appoint a new board, you are still the board.
Okay.
They have to make the appointment within 60 days of being sworn in themselves. And I believe it's November 24th.
November 15th, I believe, is when the new council takes over, what the first meeting is, but.
Which they would need to appoint by January 15th. So the odds of having a new board in place in January is very good.
Right.
Yeah, because the clerk needs adequate time to put the call out. So.
I believe last time we were appointed sometime in December.
Mhm.
Seemed right, yeah.
January 8th was our first meeting
Yeah, okay.
of this board.
Yes. Yep. Great.
And if I can just add one clarification, I know we didn't have it on our agenda because we moved away from the discussion, but just for the public's knowledge, there is no conflict on this because this is general information. I just want to say this for the record as well. The library board was questioned by some community members on our role in the all candidate meetings that are happening at the public library here at Ellie Shore. And I just want to clarify for the record, we are within our policy. We are also within the town's policy on elections. We are the host site, which means we are giving away to community groups, which is within our purview, the ability to have all candidates meetings at Ellie Shore every Monday, except for the few holidays, from the point that the election opens. So from the point that the candidates have nomination deadline right through to the election period. All candidates are and will be invited to sign up with the group. We don't take care of the registration of that. Climate Action Network Now is the lead, but BIA is involved and several other organizations. We are simply the host site for these to happen. We are providing that free of cost to our community sponsors. And we are providing the technology support that would be needed. So as a local board, we are not able to engage in politics. This is not seen as engaging in politics. This is seen as supporting our community in information. which is exactly what public libraries are about. So I just want that noted, that that is the role that this group is having for the Monday night events. And I certainly hope everyone will be present as community members. I also hope that our community will attend them. I will most definitely be here as a interested party myself. We should all be interested in what's happening in our local community and election, and hopefully will not be called on to provide tech support, but I will be here for that as well. Maybe with smarter, younger staffers at my side.
Not smarter, just younger.
Yeah. I don't want to be ageist, but yes, I have limitations and I believe in it. Know your limit and play within it.
Okay, I'm prepared to adjourn the meeting unless there's somebody else wants to put their hand up for something else. Oh, Gary.
There's something in the action plan I saw earlier, and it was around making this, the boardroom or this room for hybrid meetings, I guess. Have we applied for grants?
We did. We applied for an Ontario Trillium grant. It is closed. We are in. We're under consideration. Given that they take about 6 months, I expect we'll hear in October, which might mean that January is when we'd be able to spend. We have purchased a technology piece that we can use small and temporarily in the boardroom, but the board was uncomfortable putting 9 people into the small boardroom. We did purchase a hermetic system also, which helps with the airflow, and that is what schools, nursing homes, anyone with, you know, tighter spaces is being asked to do, because there's not a lot of airflow in there. That's what we purchased. This room has good circulation and fans, and by keeping the 2 meters, we're pretty good. We tried using that technology in here, and it was sounded like you were calling across the gorge, somebody. Didn't really have a good sound. So using Zoom with laptops is our best opportunity to still be able to engage our community through the hybrid aspect. Not fantastic if it's one of us that are hybrid. And then of course, it's open to community members to attend on site as well.
So if the grant money comes through, what does that allow you to do?
It would actually be miking the spaces so that it is a better sound quality, providing some cameras in the spaces so there's a better sound quality, being able to have a multi-screen experience so that the agenda could be up on one screen and we're seeing members of the community maybe who are on Zoom. For board meetings, it would be fantastic. And then also for presentations. So the types of public series that we used to have on site where we would pack 120 people, shoulder to shoulder, you know, knee to knee in here to watch a movie or have a speaker. I don't know where the appetite is for that. I know it's not something that I'm extremely comfortable with. But if we were to limit our numbers on site to maybe 50 or 60 people and have a better spacing, the people who don't want to come or were overflow could participate in the same speaker series virtually. For example, our rural community might not be able to get that, but some others might, and they might say, I'm fine staying home because I can still ask my question. We can see them on the screen when they ask the question. They can see us, they can hear us. So we're trying to really look at how to hybridize and modernize the space in that way. The vaulted ceilings or barrel ceilings are beautiful, but they are not conducive to this type of thing. So it really is an unusual situation that we've had to try to work with. The boardroom is still our best for hybrid meetings. We have the TV and the projectors and the sound quality in that space, but then we have to balance people's comfort in being unmasked if you're still relatively shoulder to shoulder. So I think for the foreseeable future, this is probably the setup that we'll be moving with board meetings. And we've offered this kind of setup to other community groups as well, who are looking to get back into face-to-face, but be able to have community involved.
Just a quick follow-up. So this, if we get this grant and modernize technology, which I think is a great idea, beyond the board meeting, it's for community events, and that it would be good in the boardroom as well as the gallery.
Yes, so we've written for both spaces to be done.
Right.
And they're slightly different on the types of things, but also that the two rooms could talk to each other. So that way, if it was a case where it made sense that you have a smaller group who are participating, but a bigger group who want to watch, participate, and ask questions, we could be working both rooms as an overflow in either direction. So it's a fairly modern system. We have local individuals who do this type of technology that gave us some fantastic advice and recommended various features. Our tech services staff here did some investigation, and we all planned together and wrote a grant that we could never afford to bring this type of technology in on our own. And we'll hope. I'm sure there are many other people who are thinking very similarly to us. Many library boards are trying to figure out how to move to the next phase of back to face-to-face. And I think there are many groups like us who used to do big community events, speaker series, author talks, that it's just not the same environment, so we have to find out how to do it. So I know we're going to definitely be in competition for this type of capital.
Any other questions or discussion items? Okay, seeing none, I will declare the meeting adjourned at 3:35.